Man, it is good to be home. And so it's one thing to say make yourself at home, but man, Buck Run Baptist Church is our home. In 1792, William Carey, who is later called the father of modern day missions, made a challenge to the Baptist brethren to take their responsibility of taking the gospel to the nations. And he made this challenge to the modern mission society in England. It was the particular Baptist society for propagating the gospel among the heathen. And man, sometimes I feel like that's what we're doing, right? It's propagating the gospel among the heathens. And he made this challenge to them that as they would go to India, that they would be supported and they would be cared for. And in a tearful farewell in England, he said to the society, take care of us. Watch out for us. Don't forget us. Later, Andrew Fuller was one of the men in which he had made the plea to. Andrew Fuller is telling a story, and he says this to him. He said it was like they were taking this mission to India, and it was as if a few men were going down into a deep mine. And Carey said, well, if I go down, I'll go down if you'll hold the rope. And in Fuller's mind, it said that was them asking and begging that whilst they lived, that missionary society would hold the rope. When we left to plant Overland Church, we asked people to hold the rope. I mean, that was the slogan that we used. When we would sit down at your dinner table or you would come to our house, we would actually hand you a little rope, and a little orange rope tied in a knot. Many of you send me pictures occasionally when you think about us of that rope. Some of you have it in your car. Some of it have it in your kitchen. When we come back, we go over to your houses, we often see that rope. And we ask you to hold the rope. We ask you that while we would go down in the mine, you would hold your end of it. And this, let me tell you, one of the greatest blessings in our life is how you've held the rope. You've held it. You've held it strong, you've held it tight. I'm going to walk through this morning, Jennifer and I are going to walk through kind of how you guys have held the rope and how it's different than any other church, any other partner church we have has been able to, in fact, hold that rope. Paul, the apostle, when he wrote the book of Philippians, you can actually kind of read Paul's interactions with different churches, the book of Acts 13, different letters that he wrote. But this kind of sums up our feeling in Philippians 1 of how we think of Buck Run Baptist Church. He says, I thank my God in all remembrance of you always, in every prayer of mine, for you all, making prayer with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. And I'm sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. It's right for me to feel this way about you because I hold you in my heart, for you are all partakers with me of grace, both in my imprisonment and the defense and confirmation of the gospel. For God is my witness how I yearn for you with all the affections of Christ Jesus, and it's my prayer that your love may abound more and more with knowledge and all discernment, so that you may approve what is excellent, and so be sure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ to the glory and praise of God. Later on in chapter 4, he says, yet it was kind of you to share my trouble. And you, Philippians, yourselves know that in the beginning of the gospel, when I left Macedonia, no church entered into partnership with me in giving and receiving except you only. Even in Thessalonica, you sent help for my needs once again. As I think about just our life at Buck Run and what happened here and even the sending of us. It's been 5 years ago this weekend. was actually, that wasn't planned on our end to come on the anniversary weekend. It just so happened that this is, in fact, 5 years ago that you commissioned us in this service. That you guys have been our sending church, that you guys have been the people who've helped us go. And we thank God for you all the time. Our life is so intertwined with the people of Buck Run. You guys are. And he says, I thank God for my partnership with you. And there's no doubt that this is a partnership of the gospel. This isn't just Zack and Jennifer went and planted Overland Church. It's that Buck Run Baptist Church have sent Zack and Jennifer to plant Overland Church. You've commissioned us, but you've also been committed to us. Jennifer, do you remember your first Sunday? She doesn't know what I'm going to ask, by the way. She's just up here at my wheel, so this is like hard for her. But do you remember your first Sunday at Buck Run?
Yes.
I remember mine because I saw you. Where were we?
421 campus.
Yeah, I guess she beat me here by about 3 weeks, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
And we were over at 421 campus, and it was my first Sunday just checking out the church. And do you remember what you did that day?
I joined the church.
She joined the church. 3 weeks in, committed, joined the church. She came forward, and I was like, all right. And she thought I was a jerk and arrogant. And it took a long time, like 8 or 9 months, to convince her otherwise. But she did, thanks to Jack Bauer and 24, long story. But it helped. And our life really began here. I know there's a lot of people in the room that don't know our story, so I want to share just a little bit of it and let you know like why Buck Run is so important to us and why it's so intertwined here. I was 24 years old, I believe, and young in the ministry. Daniel Broyles, the youth pastor at the time, had recruited me to come and intern under him. And so basically for me, there was a year of interning. And then I became the middle school pastor, and Daniel did high school. And Jennifer and I got married here. Herschel married us, and he like cried. Imagine that. Herschel cried during our wedding, and I'm sitting there thinking like, man, he really loves me. He loves us. He loves us a lot. He's just crying. But what it was that Michael, his son, was getting married just a few weeks later, and he could see him out in the crowd. He was thinking about his son. Wasn't even thinking about me. Anyway, and so we got married here. Had babies here. They ain't baby anymore. Lost babies here. Went through some really hard things in our life. Lost children. Adopted. And man, the adoption culture in this church definitely shaped who we are and shaped our family. And so, this church was a partner with us in the adoption of our children, the raising of our children, the rearing of our children. And we were partners with you. I mean, I look out in the crowd and I think about your children and their lives. I see Terry Dick over there. Terry, fresh grandpa, right? Got a brand new baby. David Dick, one of the guys that I had just heavily invested in and loved, and had a baby on, was it Friday? Friday. Got a new baby on Friday. And so, I look out, I see Ramsey sitting there. Ramsey coming, I think that you started coming as a 7th grader, and just our partnership in the discipling of your children, the helping of discipleship in the home, and it formed our lives. It helped form your lives. And so Daniel became the executive pastor. I became the student pastor. We did that for 10 years. We were in student ministry 10 years. And so, we took a class of 6th graders and watched them graduate high school, and we got to do that in total of 3 times, right? So three groups through, and just so many kids. And I would just brag. That's not our doing. I would just say, as a church, we ought to be proud of the young people in our church. That statistic that you often hear about student ministry is that 80% of kids leave the church after they graduate high school. And we've probably flopped that on its head. We probably have about 20% have left and about 80% have stayed. And you look at the students from our church, from Buck Run, and you've got kids in ministry all over the country. I could just brag about Neil Monroe and what he's doing in Texas, and his brother Nick in Illinois, Abby Caldell in Louisiana, and got 2 out there with us planning Overland. And there's just different ways our students are serving in ministry and being faithful. There's a church in Lexington, Kentucky called Center Point Church, and Herschel and the founding pastor of that church had in partnership in ministry for a long time. And their college pastor and myself, we were in partnership. And that church, I would just tell you this, and they may not acknowledge this, but that church has been formed and shaped by Buck Run because of our pipeline of students. And so when we talk about partnership in the gospel, we've really been partners in ministry a long time. Since August of 2005, has our family shared in partnership in the gospel and in missions. And man, we're just one family. You know, we were at the Southern Baptist Convention last week together, and we saw Rob Jackson walk up. And we think about the partnership that's happened with the Jacksons. A gospel partnership is a beautiful thing because together we can do so much more than we can when we are apart. And it's absolutely beautiful. I want to share with you something. I'm going to share with you a lot of things. If you know from my tenure here as an executive pastor, I can geek out on numbers, and I love numbers and percentages. That's why I have Jennifer up here, so that in a second I'm going to let her talk, and she can talk about stories and people and the good things. But think about the partnership in the gospel. Often I feel like that comes across as financial. We think through that financially. And so we have other partner churches. I want you to understand that. We didn't plant with just Buck Run. We've got other partner churches, churches in Lexington, churches in Tennessee, churches in Florida, churches in Colorado. They partner with us. They pray for us, but they're not our sending church. They're not our mother church. They're not. The investment's not the same. So when we left to plant, I was the executive pastor, and I was doing the budget, and it was like, Herschel said, how much can we afford to send you with? And I know the budget. Not much. And he said, well, I'm gonna challenge our people to give to you. So from Buck Run's budget, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but from Buck Run's budget, here's the number. Here's what you guys in the life of our church have given to plant Overland. From budget is $67,500. All right, that's significant. $67,500 is a pretty significant number. We have other church partners that are close to that number, but aren't that number. They're close, but not. However, Buck Run folk, that's what I'm going to call you, Buck Run folk. And so that's people who are in Buck Run now or have been in Buck Run. We're in Buck Run when we started and have individually given. And maybe it's a $25 gift one time. The largest giver from Buck Run who's given to us over time, $27,500 is what they've given. Now, Buck Run folk have given over $300,000 to plant Overland Church. That is the bulk of what has planted Overland Church is Buck Run folk. It's the people. It's the people who've given money, who give. I mean, there's people here that give $50 a month or $20 a month or $300 a month. There's people who have, out of the abundance of what God has done with them, you see this in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, out of the abundance of what God has done in their life, have invested in the gospel in other places. So I would just like to thank you so much in that partnership and believing in us and caring in us. And let me tell you what's one of the craziest things about this is occasionally there'll be somebody who's a significant giver to our church, and for whatever reason, they'll have to stop giving. And then right out of the blue, somebody else from Buck Run starts. And it's just like always kind of happens that way. And it's incredible. As our church has grown, the percentage of our funding obviously has gone down. But the commitment of Buck Run has not waned at all. But listen, financial support is only one means of support and only one means of care. And so Jennifer, speak to real quick just what's different between the way that this congregation supports us and other congregations.
I think the way that the partnership that you guys have entered in with us is that you know, the value of partnership is you have given financially, obviously, you have committed that way. And the value in that is that you've given us space, but you guys have remained faithful. You've remained faithful here to fulfill the mission of this church, right? Of equipping the saints and reaching your community here, which enables you to continue to give financially to plant Overland, but also that you have not forgotten us. You've continued to hold the rope, that you care about what happens. You care about the people. You care to know the stories. And I think that it goes beyond just your money. You see that it's not just, you're not just checking a box that you just gave $1, you gave $100 or $25, but that you actually do care about the individuals and the people of Overland. And the reason that I know that is because you guys are our #1 likers on Facebook. I don't mean that in a trite way, but it's true. Anytime, and that, as for us, is encouraging. It's encouraging to know that there are people who do care, people who do take an interest, because often when you're serving, and I mean, it can be just the smallest thing that happens. You know, because of your partnership, you know, we're able to do things like start ESL classes that are not a large financial burden, but do cost money and take time, but it's a huge win. You know, we finished our first ESL class for an entire school year, which is a huge thing because we're a church plant that's only 3 years old, but I was able to have a team of people commit to every week showing up to do this. And we had students coming, and it can seem like a very small thing compared to other types of victories, but people care. People here care to hear that story, and that's encouraging for us. And it's like when Paul writes about being encouraged by fellow brothers and sisters, because you have partnered in that way, then that's somebody that I know wants to hear my stories and wants to hear about it, and that just spurs us on to continue doing the work.
It is a spurring on. There's an accountability. There's a knowing that we've got somebody to go to lean on that cares for us. I mean, it is actually, in working with partners, you often hear church planners even talk about kind of the burden that it is. So let me just lay out an example real quick. Tri-Cities Baptist Church in Johnson City, Tennessee. That's where Daniel Broyles is on staff. That's where Will Morris came from. They're a great church. They're a phenomenal church, and they're our best partner church. So you're our best sending church. They're our best partner church, right? So you got a sending church, you got partner churches. They're our best partner church, and they really care for us well, and they love us well. And they have a very faithful, their go team, their mission team that reaches out to us and checks in on us. And this faithful lady, her name's Harriet Stupik. Harriet will send me often an email and ask for different prayer requests and different things. And I'll sit down and I'll answer those prayer requests. But the burden of relationship over email is not a fun burden for the church planner to carry, right? It almost feels artificial with partner churches that they desire to care for you, they want to care for you. But if I post a picture on Facebook of, it doesn't matter what it is, and you start commenting and they're like, oh, the boys look so good, like we automatically go back to feeling this connection of our church family. We feel love and connected to a people. The notes, the text messages, the emails, they're genuine. It's not the same level of work because of the relational equity that is there in the partnership that has happened over time. You know, my friends here are still my friends. Dusty Rhodes sitting all back there. I'm disappointed, Dusty, that you're not wearing a suit today. I thought surely you would wear a suit to make me look bad. But, you know, when Dusty calls me and goes, oh, and you know, and I still hear from him. I still hear for so many people. And Armando texts me, or whoever it is, there's a bond and a love and an interaction that's just different. It's genuine. You genuinely care. Jennifer joked, and it's like you're our number one likers. Really, we have great post engagement from Frankfort, Kentucky. And so that part is important. We want to celebrate some things with you today. We want you to hear how your investment and what it has done. So, you know, you guys are pretty familiar with our mission statement at our church. Our mission statement is this: we want to glorify God by proclaiming Jesus Christ. Have you ever heard that before? All right, and so then what are our three values? Anybody? Please tell me you know the values of your church. Proclaim, disciple. Serve. All right, well, we have a fourth. I'm going to talk about that one in a minute. But proclaim, disciple, serve. And so here's some things that we say at our church all the time. We say we want to be a church that proclaims the gospel from the pulpit, but also throughout our daily lives. There is definitely at our church a seriousness about personal evangelism, about being missional living and sharing the gospel with our neighbor, with our coworker, with the kids on our baseball team. Missional living that really came from here. I mean, when we talk about preaching, we want to be culturally aware but robust theologically. Well, where did we get that from? We got that from right here. We talk about discipleship. We say this about discipleship, that discipleship is a lifestyle for a lifetime. It's not something that you just do, and I've been discipled and I'm done, or I've made a disciple and I'm done. That you as a disciple are constantly growing and learning as a disciple, and you're constantly making disciples. The work of discipleship is never done. We never arrive until we die, right? And we're glorified. And we're never done with the task of discipling the next generation until we die. Where did that come from? Well, that came from here. And we often say about service that the greatest thing that you can aspire to be is a servant. That you have a servant's heart, that Jesus came not to be served but to serve, and that is the life and the model that we ought to live as Christians. And so in our church, as we sought to live those things out, we've seen the proclamation of the gospel from the pulpit change lives radically. We've seen lives change radically by the gospel. We've seen people who were drug addicts, or who were using cocaine, who were doing whatever the drug of choice is, to be converted. We've seen people who have been in adulterous relationships and in all sorts of sin, repent of that sin and start living for the Lord. I said this is 5 years to the weekend, and it was actually yesterday that you guys commissioned us out. If you think back to 5 years ago, that summer, there was the eclipse that happened. Do you remember that eclipse? Herschel and Tanya, you remember that eclipse. I know you do. I've heard a story or two about that eclipse from you guys. I think y'all drove to Western Kentucky and had just a real pleasant drive back together. And Jennifer and our family, like we were like, man, how can we meet people? How can we use the eclipse as an opportunity to meet people? So tell them what we did.
We went to our neighborhood school. This is what you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we went to our neighborhood school with our little glasses that we had a hard time finding, and because people were at the school watching the eclipse.
So our neighborhood
Yeah.
just like gathered.
So some people from the school, and so we just gathered there and tried to meet people and watch the eclipse from our school. Every school, most of the neighborhood schools in Fort Collins are connected to a park, and so there's this open space area, like park area next to most of the schools, and so there's plenty of room. And
Who do we sit beside?
So we sat beside, do you want me to say the name?
Yeah, is this recorded? Or is this live? That's what I should ask. Is this live?
Okay, so we
Great.
sat beside a woman named Michelle Edgerly, and at the time she was serving on the PTA, which we both ended up serving on the PTA. But at the time she was serving on the PTA at Lopez, and so we met her. She's one of the first people we met, and so we sat beside her and talked to her for a while. And
Here's what
she's
was
not going to church.
Oh no. And so
Like,
she
far
was
from it.
she was in a really bad place. She has at this point she's got teenage children. She's got a high school, middle schooler, and an elementary schooler. And her husband was in the hospital.
From a stupid accident.
They were camping. He was drunk and he fell off a cliff and got hurt. Right off the back of the campsite. And he was in the hospital and she was so mad at him. And that was our first interaction. One of the first people that we met was Michelle. Years of ministering to her, being in her life, showing up at PTA, developing a relationship with her.
Well, her oldest son,
Well, that was about to say, yeah, go ahead, you can say that.
her
Yeah.
oldest son, I became PTA president, served on PTA with her multiple years, but her oldest son got cancer. And so we just sought as a church to, and she's a very hard exterior, very, not an easy person to get to know, but we just sought as a church to try to minister to her, to try to help her, to try to just, it's one of those people you just keep pursuing, just keep showing up. And you just feel like you're not getting anywhere, right? Because it's just like a blank slate. But he got cancer, and so he did that, and he had surgery and chemo and did all of that. And
We just showed up.
He was okay after that. And then he got cancer. She made a statement to Zack, I either need Jesus or a puppy. And we were like, oh, that's great. You need Jesus.
Actually, I didn't say that.
She got a puppy.
I told her she needed both, but
Yeah,
she got a puppy.
And so we were like, oh, bad choice. But I love dogs, but that's not gonna
Jesus
do
is
anything
better.
for you. But not the dogs you bring home. But anyway, if you know that story. So he got cancer. The cancer came back. And so we reach out to her. I think that's how that happened.
Yeah.
We reached out to her again, which we had never really lost contact with her. And
But pandemic did cause.
yeah, the pandemic caused, separation. And long story short,
We just
she chose Jesus. I'm going to get to the
yeah.
I'm going to get to the end.
Jesus.
She chose Jesus.
So in the next few weeks I have a membership interview
So she and
with her
sister
and
have
her
been
sister.
coming pretty regularly, if not every Sunday. She served at our church. She served at our toy distribution. I don't know if you keep up with us on Facebook. We do a big toy distribution around Christmas. She served at that.
So this stuff takes time. Relationships take time. It's a hardened place, and so it's not like you're walking up to people off the street and tell them about Jesus, and they're like, oh, I think I'll do that. It's more like they'll great for you, good for you, not for me, have a nice day. I mean, it's apathetic, it's hard. And so it's relationships over time that have borne the fruit of the gospel. And it's intentionality, it's sharing, it's being upfront. We're upfront about our faith. We don't hide our faith. People know that, oh, that's the serious church. Those people take Jesus seriously. Radical, if you will, like, oh, they really believe the Bible. Yes, we do. So it's been that over time, and we could share story after story after story, not just of us, but of our team that's been there, and of our church members that have been there. We look at our church, and very few people at our church have been there from the start. The other day we started really small. And so, the other day in a sermon, I'm like, if you were at our first service, raise your hand. And I think between both services, there were 9 people who were there that day who had been in our first service. And that Sunday, we had close to 250 people at church. We've grown to about 250 people on a regular basis when college students are in town. We're a little less than that when college students aren't there. And so the average church plant our age, I shouldn't say average, because the average church plant, there isn't an average church plant our age. They most die. I mean, 9 out of 10 church plants don't make it. The average church plant's probably around 70 people. Some people, when they ask how many we have, they're like, you have 250 people. They go, oh, so you're a mega church.
That's true in the West. That's true. You have to think about context. In the West, that's not us. I mean, God plants churches.
Right.
You just need to know that. God plants churches. We get to be a part of it. So in the West, like here in the South, you're like, well, that's a little church. And that's true. But in the West, that's not.
It's not to say there aren't mega churches in the West. There are, but there aren't a lot of churches that ever make it to 250 people. So for us, our story, that we were given a building, and we've remodeled the interior of that building. We have 2 services. Those services are packed in the spring and in the fall during the semester. Those services are packed. So in a lot of ways, it's like, do you get, people are asking, are we going to go to 3 services? Are we going to go to 3 services? We put about 25 to 30 cars in the dirt nearly every Sunday. We don't have room to park them. With growth comes growing pains. I mean, that's how growth works. With growth comes growing pains. And you're like, wow, parking 25 cars in the dirt, that doesn't seem like a problem. Well, it's not in the summer. Right now, it's not a problem at all. But put 2 foot of snow on the ground, and you lose 20% of your other parking spaces plus that. And so we literally have people parking in neighborhoods and walking in. People walk to church to begin with. And so the winter, that just becomes a challenge. So we have to add parking. Our building is full. For a lot of years, for a lot of time, our building was only about, 50% used. But now our entire building is used. Nearly every room, every Sunday has something going on in it. So we've seen not just our worship center fill up, which isn't huge. Normally it seats about 140 people, and we can add in chairs and make it real uncomfortable and get over, which is what we've done. But the rest of the building, I mean, there's kids. And so let me just talk through, like, in the growth and all these little stories adding up. We've seen the Lord do these incredible things in the lives of people, and He's added to our number day by day. And our church is forming into a church that is a church, that cares for one another, that loves one another, that's ministering to one another. So the construction on the outside, which actually started this past week on the outside of our church, everything else has been on the inside, is just an outward signal, an outward sign of a whole lot of stuff on the inside that's being blessed by God. And so we've always said from the beginning that we're a next generation church plant. And people have asked what that means. And that means that we're a church that is intentional about discipling the next generation. And so we're a next generation church plant. We consider next gen kids, students, and college. And so Jennifer, if you would, just talk through real quick kids ministry and all the little blessings that we have. I would just note real quick, our kids minister at Buck Run, at Overland is tied to Buck Run in that her husband was in our student ministry, and his parents, Terry and Susan Hancock, are here. And so Buckley Hancock is our kids minister, kids director.
So we have a lot of kids. We went with a lot of kids, but it's really grown. And our kids use the family discipleship plan, which comes out of Tri-Cities. And so we have, most of our kids' classes are pretty full, but it's a very robust kids program, which is very beneficial because we've reached our community. We have a lot of families with a lot of young children. And so I think that's been very helpful. When people come, they look for something like that. And we're very intentional about investing in kids and also finding ways for kids who are professing believers to participate in the body too. And so Buckley does a really good job of helping kids find ways to serve also and to be kind of included and incorporated into service opportunities. So she'll do things, service projects with them. We have our Challenger Camp, which is just a VBS, but nobody calls them VBSs out there. They call them camps. So that's just a context thing. So we have our Challenger Camp that's coming up. That'll be really big. It's a really big outreach event. And so that'll reach a lot of people in the community. And often we gain families from events like that. People will come for those reasons. And so we've just seen our kids ministry just really grow a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we have no room, really.
We have no room. We swap around rooms all the time. The rooms are packed. You walk in there and you feel bad for the worker and the number of kids that they have. You're like, I'm so sorry. Got to go. It's like it's bad.
Especially when the sermon goes long.
My sermons never go long. I didn't learn that here. So, hey, preach long sermons and your church grows, right, Herschel? Not only though have we reached people and grown, we got a lot of babies that are being born in our church. We've got the flower children, Violet and Violet and Lily right now that I'm just loving on, and we've just got a whole bunch of babies. And so what's really cool is that you've got people who've come to Christ. Not all of them, but some of them have come to Christ, gotten married, and they're raising their children first generation Christians. And they're going to be discipling them in our church. And it'll be people, it's like this is the first time that it's happened. So there's like babies in our church that kind of show a new generation start. They can't point to their grandparents and say, my grandparents and their grandparents followed Christ. They're pointing to their parents and say, my parents got married and were lost and came to faith and they had me, or they came to faith and met. So that's been really neat. As a church planner, this is what you'll notice in church planning, is that churches generally reach the dynamic, their family dynamic. So if a church planter comes and they've got like toddlers, because they're around other toddler families, they reach toddler families. And so when we first came, everybody at our church had kids, and so we reached kids. But now those kids are getting older. Buddy's daughter, Ainsley, is a 9th grader. John Owen you're going into 7th. Ainsley's going into 10th. And then Tripp's there. So we've started reaching students now. And so all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere, we've always tried to have a student ministry, but it just took so long to get off the ground. And all of a sudden, we've got last Wednesday night at our midweek trek, was what we call our student ministry program. There were 25 students there. There were 25. And for a church plant that's young, that's huge. Student ministry on the low end should always be about 10% of the congregation, just in how it shakes out. A multi-generational church, that number should go up. But for a young church, for us to hit 10%, that was huge. And it's growing, and they're doing stuff, and they're learning, and we've got students being discipled. And to be honest, it's crazy to see how excited they are to have a student ministry. I asked John Owen if he wanted to come up here and talk about it, and he said, I will if you want me to, but maybe not. How about no? And he loves it. He's got a calendar in his room with every student ministry event on it, and he crosses the dates off. We get back tomorrow. John Owen gets to go. Our church is going to camp for the first time. We're taking students to camp. And so for the first time, John Owen gets to go to his first camp as our church takes their first trip to camp. It's funny, the speaker that they're going to go hear is Rob Turner, who spoke at tons of crossings camps. And our kids here, I used to take students to hear Rob. And so that's really neat for us. Our college, as we move out and we talk about college being part of Next Gen, Colorado State University is hard ground, and it's like any secular university. But if you think about all of the secular agenda items that are being forced down our throat, times it by 10. It is just heartbreaking every time you go on that campus to see. And it's not just like students pushing it, it's the agenda of the leadership of the school. I shared with Herschel back at Easter on the Saturday night before Easter on Sunday. They had a drag queen show for students, and it was called Resurrection Drag Queen Show, whatever that means. That was the title of it, and they were making fun of the resurrection of Christ by doing a drag queen show. I mean, it is antagonistic to Christians. Being a Christian on that campus isn't easy, and so we've been intentional. What we've seen, we had the Lord in kind of what He did early on was He gave us the fifth years. The people on their victory lap is what we like to call it at college, who had tried everything, partied hard, done everything, hit the bottom of, as low as you can get, hit rock bottom, and decided, man, I need to try Jesus. I need to try something else. And they'd hear the gospel. They'd come to faith in Christ. God gave us a lot of international students. The Lord kind of worked, and we were kind of upper end of college. But the problem with that is, right, they graduate really fast after that, and it's hard to establish anything. And so we kind of just prayed, and we're after the pandemic, and we lost a ton of those students, just moved home. And so it was starting from scratch. And so the previous school year, you couldn't do anything on campus. And so this past fall, we were able to get back on. We hired a new college pastor. Buddy transitioned into an associate pastor role. And we went after it. We just started from scratch. And man, the Lord has blessed it. And it all started with this girl from California named Olivia, Olivia and Shelby. And then another kid that was a missionary kid from Mexico named Thomas. And another missionary kid from China named Sam the Great. I don't even know why we call him that, but that's what he gets called. Those kids have turned, that four have turned into 30s. And there's just we're so pumped for the fall because there is this good, solid group of about 30 kids who are at our church, who are serving in our church. And once a month, we have a theology over breakfast. It's one of our most well-attended events. So they come and they learn theology for 4 hours. They're active throughout the week. They're doing stuff, and they're on that campus, and they see it. They've bought into the vision that campus is your mission field, and they're there. They're having Bible studies in dorms, and they're inviting people to it week in and week out. Law students or their lost friends are coming to Bible studies, and they're eating mediocre cafeteria food and talking about Jesus. And we're blessed. We're blessed by what the Lord's done there. In our adults, so we have 5 areas of ministry at our church. I'm not going to talk about all 5 of them, but we've got next gen, adults, worship, missions, and stewardship. In adults, we've seen just incredible growth. I don't know if you want to talk about Bible study and book study groups for a second.
So we have, throughout what would be our school year, we have Bible studies that run men's and women's. And so we'll run them 6 weeks, typically 6 weeks, and there'll be actual Bible studies. And then this summer, and they're typically pretty well attended, we'll do inductive studies through books of the Bible.
Teaching people really how to study the Bible.
Teaching people how to study the Bible. And then sometimes there'll be actual studies for people who've learned the method. And we started that pretty early on, doing that. There was a desire for that. People wanted to do that. And then this summer we started summer book studies, smaller groups. Sometimes through the school year, those Bible studies can be really large, 20 women in them. And so they're a lot larger. And so this summer we try to have smaller groups, maybe 6 to 8 people in them, if not smaller. And so we did book studies, which have been really good. And so they're not all Bible studies, but some of them are books. And so the one that I'm doing is an evangelism strategy book that walks through how to share your faith and how to reach the lost, which has been really good and really helpful for the women. So we have men doing them and women doing them. And I don't know how many. I don't
It's a
know the
bunch.
number of how many people are in them.
Often it's half of our adults
I
are.
can keep up with the numbers. I don't.
Right. Often it's half of our adults are involved in one of those studies. Plus, we also have like what would be an adult education Sunday school class. And you know what we do? Your curriculum. We teach, like right now they're doing Church Matters, and Chris and Buddy kind of communicate, and we just constantly borrow stuff on Sunday mornings from Buck Run, and that's what we're teaching our adults in the second hour. And so there's typically a good amount of adults in a class. Kyle Hancock is teaching that. It's Church Matters, and he's teaching it this morning. And so, man, we've seen a lot of adult growth. We've got an incredible women's gathering that happens 4 times a year, and we've got just really strong women in our church. We've seen, and I just thank God for the men in our church, the women in our church. There's just a strong, godly men and women who are being discipled in our church. Our missions, one of the things that Buck Run could easily be accused of is being a missions church and caring about missions. And when you look at the way Buck Run gives to missions, supports missions, how missions have been born out of Buck Run, we wanted to have that same DNA. And so from the very beginning, we've taken up that Lottie Moon Christmas offering and that Annie Armstrong offering. We don't call them that because we call it a Christmas missions offering and an Easter church planter offering. But they're strong, and our connection as a church. Most churches aren't thinking, hey, let's go on mission trips. Our church is doing mission trips. We've been to India. I've been to Malawi. We're investing in missionaries in other places, but we're also doing a lot of local missions. We partner with an organization there called Serve 6-8. And it works with churches in northern Colorado, and they're just have been a great partner for us. And so talk through some of the stuff that we've done with Serve 6-8.
So we partner with Serve 6-8 to meet the needs of the underserved in our community. And a couple of ways that we do that as a church is that we do a Thanksgiving food distribution, and we also do toy distribution. And those are 2 standard events that we do, and they're connected. And we see some of the same families at both of those. And that's a way for those families to come to our church. And you kind of host an event. It can seem like a festival almost. And we have the ability to plan it, and the church can come in. I mean, the people come in and get their Thanksgiving food box and meet us, and we can have like different little fun activities for them to do. But it's a way for us to partner and do that. And then the toys, we help pack the toys, and we don't wrap them, we help pack and then distribute them to them. But we see some of the same families, and the way that Serve 6-8 does it is that they try to give, like, our church families that are around us, so that would be our neighbors. That's how we think of it. And that's really initially how our ESL class came into fruition, is because we realized that the families who were coming into our church, one of the reasons is that our church is, at the time, is not it's a church plant. And so we would see 175 families, 180 families. That's how many they would assign us. And I would think, how am I supposed to get this many volunteers to distribute? I mean, you're supposed to have like 50 volunteers to do this event. And they would say, well, these are all the people who live around you. And I would think, wow, these are our neighbors then. But it would work. I mean, people would show up and we would make it work with like 20 or 30 volunteers. But we realized that a lot of these people were non-English speakers. And I mean, they had very little English. And so because of that need is why we realized that that was a need we needed to try to meet. And so our desire was that our neighbors who were non-English speakers would not just survive in their community, our community, because it's our community, but that they would thrive. And so we set out to start an ESL class and are continuing to do that. And what resulted in that, because of your partnership, I mean, it's you guys partnering with us and continuing to be faithful to do it, that has allowed us to do this, is that we realized that in our minds, the need was, well, they need to improve their English, but they also needed community. When we would ask them, you know, what have you gotten from this class, is that they'd gotten community in coming to our church and being with us and being with other non-English speakers, because we didn't realize that they felt so isolated. And so they were receiving community from it. And so it's been just really incredible to see that happen because of our partnerships.
So in our local missions, we did a ton through the pandemic. So we're a very young church, right? Very healthy church, very active church, and so the risk of, you know, I've yet to do a funeral as a pastor in Colorado. I've yet to do a funeral. I've done here and in Georgia, but I've not done one there yet, right? And so we're able to be really active and just get after it, and it's like one thing has led to another, and so that we're even known kind of in the community as the church that serves the community, that meets the community's needs. And so our missions have definitely led to that. When people think Overland Church, you're serious about the Bible, and they really mean what they say when it comes to meeting the needs of the community. When you're driving by and you're seeing these tents outside and you're seeing people just like drive through on a random Tuesday and get food boxes, it means something to the community around us. In kind of discovering that we've got these pockets of hidden Spanish speakers who don't really feel at home in our community, one of the things that has just been apparent to us is that we've got to start a Spanish work. I mean, we are intentional in sharing the gospel in ESL, but that has its limits. And so we need a Spanish-speaking staff member, pastor, to either start a Spanish service or to plant a Hispanic congregation. We're kind of open to either one, which just brings me to like, I sit here and I talk about like all the things the Lord has done in our church, and we can talk about our growth. Here's the truth. It's not a drop in the bucket. We could grow our church to 10,000 people, and it won't be a drop in the bucket. Paul Chitwood has been recently saying often that lostness is the world's greatest problem, and we see it every day. And I know you see it. It's here, and it's true. You know, I'm coaching my boys' baseball team right now. There's not another single Christian family on it, right? We played football in the fall. I'm sorry, you're right. There is one other. John looked at me like, you're wrong. That's the wrong stat. No, there is one other Christian family on there. we played football. That's the one I was thinking about. There wasn't a single other Christian family on the football team. You go and you meet people, and I shoot archery on Wednesday nights, and like I'm the Christian in the room. The Christian community there, the Christians love each other, but it's such a small number. The only way that we're going to impact our area, the West, and we talk about the South is a post-Christian culture. We're not. We're a never-Christian culture. We're a never-Christian culture. It's never had a revival. It's a never-Christian culture. So we look at that, and this is what we would tell you, is that we're not going to do it by growing our church. We're going to do it by multiplying our church. So our fourth value is multiplication. And here's some really good news and something that we're really proud of. Our church is getting ready to multiply for the first time. We're 3.5 years old, and we've announced in family meeting the beginning of June that we're sending out the Sampson family to plant Overland Church Durango. And so our church is already getting ready to plant another church. It's multiplication that will reach the West. We look at the New Testament and we watch the sending of churches to places, and those churches sending to other places is what church history told us, is that we've got a burden to multiply. We've got intentional kind of dots on a map, target places that we know these need the gospel. Right now we have 3 interns from Tri-Cities Baptist Church who are basically doing a research project for us in northern Colorado to figure out where gospel preaching churches are, even non-SBC churches, SBC churches, where as long as they're preaching the gospel, where they are and where the underserved areas, where the growing areas, we're mapping it all out. What we know is that in northern Colorado, we want to plant a church about 30 minutes north of us, or about 20 minutes north of us, just to the east of us on the other side of the interstate in Timnath, and one to the south of us in North Berthoud or Southwest Loveland. We know that we could put a church in one of those 3 places, and we already have people driving from those places that they can begin to reach those communities. We also have college towns that are underserved with the gospel. And so there are mountain towns that have smaller colleges that have almost zero Christian presence. And so the reason Buddy and Brooke are going to Durango, it's almost 7 hours from us. We're planning a church 7 hours away, but it's because of Fort Lewis College. It is essentially, statistically speaking, it is an unreached people group. And that's why we're going to Durango. And when we've talked to other Christians in Durango, we've talked to like church planning people over there. They're like, please come. Often we hear somebody say, will you plant a church in our town? When we engage a Christian, they go, you should plant a church here. And so we've got 3 cities on our heart: Durango, Alamosa, which has Adams State, and Gunnison, which has Western State. There's two others kind of like just barely off the radar. One is School of Mines where's School of Mines? Golden, Colorado, and then there's another school in Grand Junction. But those 2 have a little more engagement than the other 3, and so those are on our mind. And so you're going, well, Zach, how are you going to plant churches in those places as a church plant? And so we see everybody in our church as being part of the servant leadership pipeline. We want everybody to either be a volunteer, a leader, a coach, or a department lead. And so everybody we see, we start thinking church planner in training about 5th grade. All right, so our 4th and 5th graders, we talk about Buckley getting our kids to serve. We're teaching our kids to serve because we want them to one day go plant a church, right? Or be a part of a church plant. So we think through everything in servant leadership pipeline. Everything you do in church is training you to do it elsewhere. So when we train you to teach or lead or to greet or to be on the worship team, we're thinking that you're going to do that in order so that you may leave. When college students come to us, we're going to lose those college students. They're going to move back home, and so we want to train and equip them to do it when they go back. More than that, we are developing a residency, a church planting residency. So partnered with some form of theological education from a seminary, they can get the tools that they need to plant with us and for us to be able to send people with them. And so we need residents. I'm actively looking for residents. When I go to a conference, the Together for the Gospel or the Southern Baptist Convention, every young guy I see, I am shaking their hand and planting, I'm just like sowing seeds everywhere, trying to recruit young guys, and just let me around Will Morris for an extended period of time. Let me around Ron Sturm right there for come on, Ron. I'm going to go steal guys left and right because the world is lost, and we need people in our churches that we can raise up to send out. We've got the dots on the map. We've got lostness around us, and so we're going to plant churches. We want to see the kingdom of God expand. And so we're going to be super intentional in everything that we do. And we're going to be and we're going to be committed to it. And what we've learned here about commitment and partnering, holding the rope, you got to think, it means something. When we say, I almost can cry when looking at Buddy and Brooke, knowing that they're about to leave us again. They left here 5 years ago to go to Durango. Because one, I know the weight of what it means to leave. And I know the weight of what it means to let somebody go and to hold the rope for them. And so as we send people, we're going to hold the rope for them. But let me tell you something. We can't hold the rope for them if you don't hold the rope for us. And I'll be quite honest with you. I have zero fear that you're going to let go of the rope. I'm pretty confident in Buck Run Baptist Church and their ability to hold the rope and how you guys have done it as a congregation. And so it is a blessing for us to be able to sit up here and talk about these things, to sit here with confidence and just knowing the stories and knowing how you've done it and the blessings of it. I can just think through story after story. I look at a room and I know. I mean, I've seen. I've got your letter. I think of somebody who lost a family member and got a little bit of inheritance. And you know what they did with that inheritance? They just passed it on. Figure out how you can reach college students with that money. I don't need it. And so, man, we just thank you for holding the rope, for being a part of it, and for helping us continue the work to expand. God has gifted us, and we want to steward those gifts well. Often we talk about partnership and how you can continue to partner. I would ask that you'd pray the Luke 10:2 prayer for us. The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Pray to the Lord of the harvest to send laborers into the field. We have our watches actually set. Buddy, our staff, we set them Monday through Saturday. Don't do this on Sunday. Don't interrupt church or Sunday school for you. But we at 10:02, our alarms go off, and we pause and we pray that Luke 10:2 prayer that the Lord would send us laborers. So pray that prayer for us, that He'd sustain us. It's not easy to raise Christian kids in a secular culture. It's hard. That culture's coming after them hard. That's true here too. It's true here too. It is no different for you, but it's definitely hard. So pray for our kids. Jennifer has a job with Send Relief. She works with Josh Benton, another buck runner, and they're having an incredible kingdom impact. And Jennifer has 3 jobs. And so she still writes curriculum for Tri-Cities, and she still works for Send Relief, and she's a church planting wife, and those 3 things are big things. And so pray for her. Our church, as we send, we're constantly looking and developing staff. This is another thing that I would say is that we've yet to have a staff person on our church that's ever held a staff position at another church. So you're training everybody all the time. It's literally building the airplane while you're flying it all the time. And so in praying for our church, to pray that the Lord would give us mature partners too. That he's like, not only would send laborers, but he would send mature laborers. And he prayed for Overland, Durango. Start praying for them, praying that the Lord would raise up from our church and other churches people to send with us. One of the things that we're going to be intentional about is trying to partner with Colorado churches in the Front Range to help plant Durango. And so pray that the Lord would give us partners in Colorado that would buy in. One of the things I would say that the churches in Colorado need is buy-in to reach their own state. And so I would ask for that. So continue to support us financially. That would be the ask. I mean, here's the truth. The two most limiting things for us are number one, it's laborers, and number two, it's resources. A lot of churches in the South compared to churches in the West are resource rich, and we are resource poor. And so to continue to resource us and to continue to pass that along. And then the third thing I would just say is continue to come see us. We're so excited to have a mission team come from Buck Run in a few weeks. We're pumped to have them. Continue to come. Sometimes just coming for a visit is a blessing. Kevin Wilkins, he and Neil were passing through in their semi-truck several months ago, and I was at a breaking point. I was ready to quit. I'm not joking. It was over like just trying to get construction stuff finished. We'd done everything ourselves. And they like stopped in and finished it. He and Neil did. They took care of us. When people stop in, when people are like, hey, we're coming west, we want to stop and see you on a Sunday morning. Bobby and Judy Bullock, y'all are in here somewhere. Y'all stopped in and seen us. And there's been different people who've stopped in. The Woodruffs came and saw us last year. The Brattons came and saw us last year. Like, that is a gift to us. I want you to understand that. The Howes, you guys had a friend come by and visit us just a few weeks ago. And it was just a joy to see people from Buck Run. We've offered our basement over and over and over. This offer still stands. If you want to come see Rocky Mountain National Park and the Elk Bugle in the end of September and see the leaves, you're welcome to stay in our basement. So, that being said, I don't know how to land this plane. It's kind of up in the air. You want to pray and close it?
I just want to say something.
Okay, say it.
Another thing. I just want to say that it often can seem like, because we've been gone 5 years, that the work is complete, but it's not. And God is still moving and working. And the value of your partnership is as important today as it was, 5 years ago when you commissioned us to go. And as he's been talking, I've been thinking about God, Jesus came to seek the lost, and he sent us, he gave us all the Great Commission and told us to go. And as we've been in Fort Collins, I often pray for our city, and I pray for lost people, and I pray that God would send a revival and that he would revive our city. And our city can feel really lost at times. And I know that, culture is at all of the United States, but often in Colorado, it really prides itself on being super progressive and all those things. And so, but God loves those people, and he wants those people to know him. I know that he does, and he has us there for a reason. And so right before, we were getting ready to come here, we were outside and we had so many things to do. And kids had baseball, and we were like making a plan, like trying to divvy up our task. And we have this neighbor couple across the street, and they're so odd. I'm just being honest. They're very they're as far from Christ as you could probably possibly be. And during the pandemic, I don't know if you remember, but people would paint their windows. I was one of them with different things. I don't know if you did that or not, but I did. And I put a cross on our window. The boys and I did it, and she put up her rainbow flag in her yard. It was kind of like we weren't really trying to go back and forth at each other, but maybe we did. And we're not antagonistic to one another, but we clearly do not have the same beliefs. But she pulled her little electric car, which is, if you drive an electric car, that's great. Find a place to plug it up. But sorry, but she pulls her little car over to our side of the street when she's leaving, and they love their cars. And I'm thinking, oh, did something happen? Did our boys do something that she didn't like? And she rolls her window down, and she's like, are you gonna be here tomorrow? And I was like, no, we're not. And she's like, you're not? And then she goes, oh, I just want to come over and visit with you guys. We just never visit. She's like, I just really want to come and sit and talk with you guys on your patio, which is just really amazing to think that God, why does she want to come talk to us? She knows who we are as people. And so I just say that to say that God is
still working
in hearts. Lost people don't seek Christ. The Holy Spirit draws lost people to him. And so I cannot wait to get back and sit on my patio and talk to her. I cannot wait. And I want to tell you that it is your partnership, because I feel confident that one day we'll stand in heaven and there will be people that you will see because of your partnership. Because of your partnership. Because you sent us. That will be there.